Heightened senses, that's what's coming up on The Art of Bombing, episode 143.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. I'm Dan Bublitz Jr. It is Tuesday, June 23rd. I hope everybody's having a great week so far. Today on the show, my guest is Dustin Nickerson. We had a fabulous conversation as we go back from when I lived in San Diego. I've known Dustin quite a while, and we had a great conversation, and I'm excited to share that with you today. Before we get into that great episode and that great conversation, we got to talk about some stuff. That's right. We got to handle the business. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is a delicate subject. It is a very delicate subject, but it is a serious subject, and it is something that we need to talk about, and that is sexual misconduct and sexual harassment and rape and all of those things that are happening within the comedy community. And not just the comedy community, but just all over. This is stuff that happens, and it's got to stop. That's plain and simple. It's got to stop. We gotta be better and do better, especially us guys. We gotta take accountability. You know, if one of our friends is being a shitbag and harassing a lady, we need to tell them to stop harassing that lady. It's inexcusable. You know, if we know that somebody's being a shithead to another person and we don't stop it, we're just at fault. We're just as much at fault. We gotta take accountability, and we gotta put each other in check if you need to. But we definitely gotta change the way our community is, because our community, comedy is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun for everybody. And when people don't feel welcome, if they feel unwelcome and uncomfortable and into our community, then not everybody's having fun. I guess that's where I'm going with that. And it's inexcusable. We got to do better. We got to do better and be better. It's that simple. We got to be more welcoming. Comedy needs more women we need more women in comedy. We're getting, basically, it's just the same thing over and over. It's just a bunch of straight white males, and I can say that because I'm a straight white male, and I see it. And there's oftentimes when I'm at a show, I'll even joke about it on stage, because I see it. It's obvious, and we need to mix it up. And ladies, I always hear that there's people will say, well, there's not a lot of women in comedy. Well, do you blame them? They're surrounded by fucking creeps. So I guess the moral of this is to stop being a creep. And I apologize for the obscenity, but it's a very passionate subject. All right. And I'm sorry, Dustin, for the profanity, because he's a clean comedian. So double apologies there. One for you listeners, and one to Dustin. But very passionate subject, and it's something that needs to be addressed. I did a live comedy show last Friday. It was fun. My set was okay. I didn't have the strongest. It wasn't my strongest set that I've ever done, but it was a good time. I enjoyed it. I want to say thanks to Peak Entertainment for putting on that show and giving me some stage time. I still had fun. It was a good time. I got to go out with my fiance, came to the show, and one of our other friends came to the show, and I got to hang out with them, and it was a good time. And even ran into one of my coworkers randomly, so that was cool. And I got to see a bunch of cool Twin Cities and surrounding areas comics, so that was always fun. And some comics from out of town, so it was cool. It's always good to finally get to do some real socializing, and we need that. We do. All right, the next thing on the agenda, that's right, I got my little agenda of things to talk about here, is the new Art of Bombing Patreon. That's right, there's a new Art of Bombing Patreon that you can find at patreon.com/artofbombingpod. If you would be so inclined to, support the show financially, now you can. And it's pretty easy. There's only 2 tiers, and one's a $5 tier, one's a $10 tier. They both have great benefits, such as, there's tangible goods like stickers and posters that you can get. They're going to give you early access to the podcast as I record them, ad-free, intro-free. So if you don't like this intro that I did, you can subscribe for $5 a month, and you can listen to all the episodes from now on without ads or my intro. It's just the conversation. So that's pretty cool, right? So there's and other great things too. There's going to be some other great stuff too. We're going to do some monthly comedy tips and tricks, Ask Me Anything, and quarterly Zoom meetups and things like that. So trying to build a community. So like I said, if you feel inclined to, we would really appreciate the financial support. But the best way you can support the show is by telling someone. That's right, tell somebody. Tell somebody about the Art of Bombing podcast. Tell them where you're getting all these great tips and tricks for comedy. Tell them where you're learning all the good stuff from the failures. Tell them where you're learning to succeed through failure. The Art of Bombing. That's right. Tell somebody about it, and then subscribe, rate, and review. That's right, 5 stars. Give us a 5-star review and type some nice words. I would greatly appreciate that, because that's how you can really help the show. Those 5-star reviews really do help. Helps other people find the show, and expands our reach. And after all, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to expand the reach so everybody gets better together. All right, that's enough of this intro. We're going to get into this great conversation that I had with my good friend, Dustin Nickerson. All right, here we go. Enjoy.
Yeah, same. I don't know. I have some dates. Will they happen? I have no idea. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, and I don't know if you feel the same way. The protests and the riots and just the general tension has actually kind of made me less eager. Not that I don't still want to go on stage. I absolutely want to go on stage. But during quarantine, I was just I want to go back to this. I want to go back to this. I want to go back to this. And now with this going on, I'm like, there are more important things than this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, because I'm supposed to do something like this weekend, and I've kind of thought about my opening, joke or whatever, and I just keep coming back to I haven't been on stage in 3 months, but don't worry, nothing significant has happened in that 3 months. There's been no news, nothing. It's like we've lived a lifetime in 3 months,
Yeah, that's for sure. 2020 has been something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just still, it's exhausting to even think about, mm-hmm. to try to look back and reflect just on this year alone.
Speaking of looking back and reflect, I see the Legends Comedy Club poster in the back there.
Yes, it is back there. Got all the signatures still on it and displayed in the studio. I got a bunch of other comedy stuff up here too, like posters and stuff.
As my 13-year-old boy would say, let's get a rip for Legends Comedy Club. Really, is saying R.I.P. that hard? You just got to rip. But I like it. There probably 5 or 6 times. I had a good time. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked you guys' setup. We had fun.
Oh, absolutely. It was, it was a good thing. We did our best to try to pay everybody. So, that's something that's important, I feel like, when it comes to comedy, because there sure are a lot of shows where they don't want to pay anything.
I have played worse clubs that have stayed in business longer. I don't know if that makes you feel better, but
yeah.
I've definitely I played a lot worse rooms than Legends.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad it wasn't the worst room.
Not even close. Not even top 20. Not even top 30%.
Yeah, pretty good for just a little resort in Santee.
Yeah. We had a good time.
Yeah, that's for sure. You were pretty busy too before all this started. How many dates did you end up having canceled roughly?
Oh man.
I mean,
yeah, I had my spring tour get canceled twice now.
Yeah.
Like I had, I was on a big tour and then that tour got canceled and I was all mad about that. And then I had worked really hard to kind of line up my own stuff and I got some really cool opportunities that I was really excited for and I lost that. And I mean, I think in total, it's hard to say exactly. I mean, probably 50 dates. Yeah. I mean, I would think,
yeah. Oh, geez.
That's not counting spots, because
yeah.
In general, I'm up 5-6 times a week, and so I haven't done any of those for, I don't, when did this all start? Mid-March. So
yeah.
Month. It was weird how it just all happened. I was supposed to get on a plane to Sioux Falls of all places. I had a gig in Sioux Falls was my first gig to officially get canceled. And it got canceled on a Wednesday before I left on a Thursday. And then everything after that just got canceled. It was really kind of strange, what's going to happen? Is this going to happen? And it just one went and it was like a domino and then they were all gone, because not all at once, but it really, once that one hit, then it was like the spark that set the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that because I had a show right when it started, kind of right when things were starting to break out, and the venue owner decided because there already people bought tickets and nobody was calling about canceling or anything. So
yeah.
said, well, let's go ahead and do the show, and I'm glad we did because it's the last show that I got to do.
Yeah.
Since then, because then after that everything started canceling, and it wasn't it wouldn't have been, maybe it might not have burned as bad as if it would have just all canceled at once, but it was like a slow burn. It was well, let's just test it. Let's just kind of see how things are. So we'll cancel this week, and now we're going to see how next week. And you're just slowly watching all the dates just get erased off the calendar. Oh.
Yeah, it's instead of someone, if you're going to take all my kids, just take them all at once. Don't just take them one at a time, slowly, every day,
Right? Stop torturing me.
Yeah. How was your last gig? How was that last show? Because mine
was fun. It was great. I had a good time. Yeah, it's one of my favorite venues. It's a show that I booked too, and it's just outside of Sioux Falls, actually, in a small town outside of Sioux Falls called Garrettson. And the restaurant, it's called Oh So Good. I've been producing shows there since they opened up. We've been doing, quarterly dinner shows. And
cool.
Omar, who owns the restaurant, is just an amazing chef. And so he does these dinner shows where he does a 3-course dinner. And then we have comedy. And I usually have, I host and then I bring in a feature and a headliner. And it's a good time. So, and it didn't disappoint. It was a good show to be a last show for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, mine was not good. It was okay. It was at Madhouse, but have you done the new Madhouse here in San Diego? Yeah, I don't know if your listeners know, but Dan and I know each other. We're based in San Diego for a long time. And
yep.
Did you start here too?
No, I started in South Dakota right before I moved to San Diego. So pretty much. I mean, I started in South Dakota, but I only did comedy in South Dakota maybe 6 months before I moved to San Diego. So it's close enough to my origin.
Right. So Madhouse moved and is, it used to be in the mall. It's still downtown, and it's right, it's right in the heart of the gas lamp, and which is good and can be challenging because you can just get pretty rowdy crowds in there, or just very a lot of the crowds are barked in, so they don't have, and a lot of time they're barked in during the show. And so it wasn't terrible. I was closing out. I was supposed to be doing a closing 30 at the end of the show. the normal guys who like the owner and the normal like kind of manager weren't there. So it was like the whole show was just being run by a door guy, and it kept adding more door guys to the lineup. Like it was supposed to be like 4 or 5 comics, and it was like 9 or 10, and they're all running light, and it's just bad. It's so bad, and there's like maybe 2 or 3 strong sets before me, and then they all start getting chatty, and then they start getting heckly, and then I just walk into this nightmare of a show, and it was one of those things that afterwards, like the comics and the crowd was like, that was really good, and you're like, everyone enjoyed that except me. I didn't have fun doing that. I don't like, it was a lot of crowd. Like that's what my thought is, like, listen, if I'd have known that was going to be my last set, I would have done less crowd work. I didn't,
yeah, right.
I didn't want that to be my legacy. I didn't want that through the stages asking people where they're from.
Yeah, right. Just plow through the material regardless of if they're paying attention or not.
It was one of those nights that I was like, okay, man, this is like one of the clubs that I'm most comfortable with, and it's in town, and it's a Wednesday night, and I'm doing 30. This is the definition of a set where I get to work on stuff, you know? Like, this is a club where I get to work out my new stuff. And then I got in, and I was like, this is going to be working out. It's going to be work is what this is. And it was. So, and it's, you know, when you're a clean comic dealing with hecklers, you have limitations.
yeah, right. You can't just call them a bad name.
Yeah. And I also like, I'm genuinely like on stage, like dealing with hecklers is like an interesting like psychology test for me, because like people don't want me to be mean. And I'm not a particularly, I mean, I can like have some bits that are kind of mean, but like if I like, I know it from experience, like I don't have the type demeanor or look or personality on stage where, and this is probably true of you too, like where you can't really be mean to a crowd member, like mean.
Oh, no. If I'm mean, I lose the whole audience.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not like Joey Diaz, who can just like rip them to shreds, you know, like, and everyone's totally okay with it. Like, it's this real kind of like delicate, like I'm probably going to make fun of you a little, but I'm probably going to make fun of myself too. And, you know, this weird way of self-deprecating and handling hecklers, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
We don't really have. I don't feel like I have another option, because the times that I've genuinely gotten mad on stage, it has hijacked my whole set, and then I get really mad.
Yeah, I've seen some comics get pretty mad on stage, and it's interesting how, you know, and not like in a fun, like still be able to win the audience back, you know.
Right.
Like, I remember a contest at the Comedy Palace, and the guy, one of the comic got so mad because of heckling that he called a lady a C word, and then it like just transpired from that. And it was a contest. You only had like 8 minutes, you know, whatever. And then, like, as soon as he walked off stage, the first thing he said is, "Man, I shouldn't have said that. I was so mean." That was like, he knew, like, he was like, he knew as soon as he walked off. And it's just like, that's exactly it. It's easy to lose control, try to, you know, let that anger kind of take over sometimes.
The way I think about it a lot of time is like, you're oftentimes more mad than the crowd is. Like, and so if you respond, you know, too big, they're like, that was out of line. Cause they're not, I remember one time I was at the Laugh Factory in Long Beach, and I was doing like 15, and I was having first 12, I was like, I'm doing really well right now. I'm happy with this. You know, I'm cruising along, and I was getting into my closer, and I was like, this can be a great set. I'm feel real good about this. And I saw a girl on her phone, and it just straight up, just in my face texting, you know, and it made me so mad. And I I went after her. I don't even remember what I said exactly, but I was like, oh, really? Getting on your phone right now? Like, I was like, genuinely, and everybody else was like, whoa, What are you doing?
Oh, no.
Like, because they didn't care. They didn't care that she was on her phone. Only I cared that she was on her phone. And I totally, like, lost it and could barely get back into my set, you know? And I think I might have reflected and said something like, oh, well, that was a good choice by me to deal with that. And then we laughed and, like, tried to move on. But the only time I feel like you can genuinely get mad at a heckler and be mean to them is when they're doing something that makes everybody else mad. They're being, they're not being the like kind of playful or like encouraging heckler. They're just being annoying and the whole crowd already hates them. And then you have permission but that doesn't happen that often. Crowds they don't care about it as much as you do. They don't care that your rhythm is a little off. You know?
Yep. Or they step on your punchlines or things like that. I mean, because that's like one of the most annoying things about a heckler is when they, you know, because it always seems like their timing is impeccable to heckle right when you're trying to land a punchline. Like, why not? You know, you could have said something during the setup. You know, and I got to start it over.
Yeah, exactly. I'm 3 minutes into this, and yeah, you're right. It is like it's like you're dancing with somebody and they're stepping on your feet, but they're not stepping on everybody else's feet. You know.
Yep.
You know, so I mean, don't get me wrong. There's lots of crowds that don't like hecklers, but most of the time they can't hear them. Like most hecklers that bother us are kind of quiet, or they say something little thing, and the person in the back room has no idea what they just said. You know, it's different when somebody shouts something out. You know, like it's not, you know, Eddie Murphy. You know, hey, you Mr. Robinson. You know, like it's not that. It's not a theater of silence and somebody yelling something. That's not what we deal with. I mean.
No, and it's amazing what you can hear from the stage. You know, Like, granted, the crowd is supposed, you know, they're quiet and laughing and doing what they're supposed to, but you can hear like it's like when we're on stage, we're just like zoned in, looking for the worst possible thing to happen or hear. You know,
a lot of time we can't even see. We're blind. We're like Daredevil. Like we're blind, but our senses are heightened. You know?
Yep. Yeah. No, exactly.
We got like the radar read of the room. You know?
You hear one thing out of place, and you're like, "What the heck is going on over in that corner?"
Like you're here to protect.
Just try to order a beer.
Exactly. Like, relax. Yeah, you hear something, and you're like, you get all mad, and then you realize it was the waitress. Ooh, my bad.
Yeah. Yep. Whoops. I'm sorry. Please tip her.
There are loud waitresses though. You ever have that one? They're just like, are you intentionally trying to be heard over me? That's not your job here. You're just a little quieter. Did you bring a megaphone? Are you speaking through? Did you take that from the protest and now you're doing your order through this? They've got like. Sure. Yeah, they've got like those little kid mics, those little plastic ones that they're speaking, you know.
Yeah,
just people with the 2-item minimum.
Little speaker on the bottom of it.
How are you so loud? How is this even possible?
Oh man, that's definitely people like that out there. That's for sure. They've seen that. Yeah, but it's like I said, it's so funny how. Because now, you know, when you're on stage, you don't really think about it. And I don't even always think about it much now until we started having this conversation. But, you know, the senses are really heightened. Like some of the stuff I've heard on stage, like in real life, I would never be that attentive to what's going on around me. You know what I mean? Like
that's
somebody could, you know, I could be walking down the street and somebody could come up right next to me and call me a bad name. And I would totally not. You know, but like, somebody whispers something in a comedy club showroom. I'm like, what?
It's so funny. I like ignore my kids talking to me all the time. I just like zone. I zone out a lot. I just don't hear stuff. I like don't. That's. I think it's just right because we're just our adrenaline is up and we're on 11, right? Like everything about us, like we're on a stage performing in front of a group of people that is sitting and watching. So yeah, hopefully your senses are a little dialed up, but you're totally right. It's like a different. That's probably why the reason that it's like the stage is such a drug in that sense, because it kind of like releases something it's an experience that you don't have otherwise,
Yeah.
I noticed, like, at first, like I said this to my wife, like a month and a half in, I was like, I've missed more days in comedy in 2020 than I missed in all of 2019. Like, I took, I didn't miss 30, 40 days all of last year, so to not be, it's strange. But I noticed like physiologically and kind of like biologically, usually around like dinner time, I was getting like particularly kind of like antsy and low. And I just told her, I was like, this is when I usually kind of am getting up. Like usually I can not think about my set. I mean, not when we first start. When you first start, you're like, oh man, I got an open mic on Thursday.
Yeah, right.
You first call in for your first open mic and they say, okay, you're going to be on. You're like, oh no, what did I commit to this?
That's how I felt the very first time I signed up for an open mic. The very first open mic I did, because it wasn't like a show up, go up thing. It was a monthly deal, so you had to email way ahead of time.
Yeah, and you don't know. I mean, it's probably different. It probably wasn't different in South Dakota. I mean, I started here. What you don't know when you go into it is, I didn't know that, like, I knew an open mic was a thing. I didn't know open micers was a thing. I didn't. I was walking into this fraternity, of comics who, like, this was their everything. Because in your open mic days, like, there really is kind of your everything, like these are the sets, these are your peers, it's why you're so close to the people that you start with, and I remember the first open mic that I did, I remember very vividly, and I was like, I brought a friend and I recorded it, and I was like, this is a big deal, it's my first, and it's your first time going on stage, it's a huge deal,
yeah, absolutely.
But when I remember going the second time, and it was like kind of like a little bit having the curtain pulled back, because I was like, oh, these are the same people that were here last time. And it was like seeing regulars at the gym or something, or like, I was like, okay, this is not just like a thing they do once or twice. These are comedians. Well, they're on their way to being comedians.
Yeah. Very true. No, I found
never seen or heard from again.
Yeah, right. And those are the smart ones sometimes. I feel
like. Yeah, isn't it? It's weird when comics drop off. Who are regulars. I texted, this is a name you'll know. I texted our buddy Zoltan the other day, and I was like, "Hey man, you remember Cameron Dyson?" Like, I was like,
yeah.
Everywhere when I started, he was getting booked. He was on weekends. He was hosting the mics. He was just there. And I was like, where is he? And he's like, I don't know, man. I think he might have quit. And I was like, good for him.
Yeah.
And he was funny. Cameron was funny.
He was.
But like, there's something to be said sometimes for, if it's good for you to get out, then just get out.
And I think that was his case. I think he got tired of the negative energy, and I think work was part of it too. Because last I heard, he moved back to San Francisco and is just working and staying away from. But I mean, that was, who knows now. But
I mean, it's comedy, like, it's do what you want with it. If you want to be. You can be someone like Bijan, again, another mutual friend of ours, who is so funny and goes up every once in a while. Like, it goes up a couple times a week. I don't know how, but he's so funny, and he has a job, and he does it, and he seems happy with it. It's great. Do whatever you want with it. If you want to just do open mics, like, I don't know, there were definitely, like, I don't know if you remember this from your open mic days, but there were definitely people who were like, I just remember watching it. It's like, you're going to do mics forever, and I think you're okay with it.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
Whereas I did them, and I was like, I have to get out of these as soon as I can. I don't know that between me, you know.
Right? Yeah. And it's funny because even now, or being in comedy as long as I have, I still go to Mike's once in a while, but like, you know, I'm on a mission when I go. It's a lot different than when I started, you know, going now versus then.
Right. Yeah, it does. Well, some of it's like based on your scene, like you know, San Diego is secretly one of the great comedy scenes in the country as far as stage time goes.
It really is.
And if you're established, it's not, you know, you can get up pretty regularly. I mean, in theory, not right now, obviously. But you know, I have a lot of friends like comics in like Nashville. Nashville's kind of become like I don't want to say a second city, maybe a third city. My hometown, Seattle, is kind of the second city, but a lot of comics in Nashville, and a lot of them who are way more established than me, go up to Mike's there often. And that's because that's what they have. You know, they have 1.5 clubs, you know, they don't like have kind of the regular scene, whereas San Diego has like 6 and a ton of good independent rooms, you know? So
yeah. That's one thing I was just going to say with interesting because you brought up Nashville, and I don't know a ton, but I've kind of been discovering a lot of comics in that area or whatever. And I don't know if it has to do with the region that they're in, but it seems like there's a lot more clean comics coming out of like Nashville in that area. And maybe I just don't know enough comics, but a lot of the ones that I've kind of been, you know, onto lately are clean comics. I mean, because a lot of it is I listen to Rick Roberts' podcast, and
Rick's great.
He is great, and I follow Dusty Slade and these guys, and like I'm seeing a lot of like that from Nashville. But
there's definitely it seems like the home base for it. That in Salt Lake.
Well, yeah. Yeah. How could we forget Salt Lake in that?
I
right?
know. That was one of the dates that I got closed. I was supposed to be headlining there. And when a club headlines me, they know they're like, okay, this will be an okay weekend, but we're not going to pay him a lot. So like, it's okay for us, you know?
Yeah.
And
I was going to come see you actually.
Oh, really?
Because I was supposed to be filming my Dry Bar special that same weekend. You were in Salt Lake City. I was thinking
what should have been.
What should have been, yeah. Because I saw you were headlining that weekend up in Salt Lake, and I was like, well, shit, I can do my show, and I'll go pop up and say hi to Dustin before I have to go home. And
man, it makes it even more sad. Yeah, that weekend, I mean, just to lament together a little bit, that particular weekend, in early of April, I was supposed to go get a very nice paycheck in Denver on Thursday for like a private gig. The gig would have been terrible, but the money would have been wonderful. And then I was going to go to 2 shows headlining Wise Guys, and then come back to Denver and headline Comedy Works for a night. So,
wow.
So that was going to be that. And then on Wednesday, the next, like 2 days later, I was supposed to be headlining the Lab at the Hollywood Improv, and that was meant to be like a showcase of my hour. Like we had a bunch of, you know, buyers we had invited out and industry to be like, hey, now granted they would have all said no, but it was like a huge kind of week for me. And actually we were supposed to like take our kids up to Universal Studio that same time when we were in LA. And so it was like really like just kind of like earmarked, like this is gonna be like the coolest week ever. And no, then the world ended.
Right.
And I was in Salt Lake. It's devastating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, you mentioned Zoltan. I had him on a couple weeks ago, and I was actually supposed to have lunch with him the day that we ended up recording the podcast. Cause I was supposed to be out in San Diego for a while. Cause I was featuring at Pachanga, and then I had a couple dates scheduled in and around San Diego before I moved out, because then I was going out to Laughlin, and I was doing a bunch of Entertainment Max stuff, and like all that got canceled. So yeah, it's the life, I guess.
That might have been for the best that run got canceled.
Oh yeah, well probably. I mean, yeah, in hindsight, it probably
that run. I've done that run, and it's like 50-50.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You'd be like, good show, bad show. Good show, bad show.
For me, that was an excuse to come out to San Diego.
Yeah.
That's really why a lot of times when I take those gigs like out there, it's because I'm like, oh, I can stop in San Diego and see some of my old pals.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know I'm not going to make a ton of money. Most of the shows are probably going to be terrible, but at least I get to chill with some friends for a little bit, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And
That's how I try to look at it.
I mean, I haven't done Pachanga in years because that booker doesn't like me. I mean, it's not that he doesn't like me. It's that sometimes you just get like slated as something and you're that forever, you know?
Yep.
And the last conversation I had with him was like, hey, like, we'll use you when we have like, or if you want to like host or like doing like some like fill in feature work, like last minute, like somebody drops out, maybe you could come feature. And I was like, oh no, like I'm not, this is not like, not because I'm above that, but in this town, I have better options. If I was on the road, sure. Yeah. Or if I was moving to a new place, you're like, but I haven't done that run in a while. But the time that I did Pachanga, I've done it probably 3 times, 4 times. It wasn't bad, right? It was okay as far as the casino gig goes.
Well, for me, I mean, the lodging and the meals and the stuff like that wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
But the shows themselves sucked balls. But that was because it was like Easter weekend,
Right.
And
It was a casino on Easter.
Yeah, exactly. It was a casino on Easter weekend, so that pretty much said everything you need to know about all the shows.
That is so funny. Yeah. Casinos are so like, I would say hit or miss, but it's more like bunt or miss because they're never like a hit. They're like, they're like a drooping single or miss, you know?
Exactly. And that, for me, that whole weekend was just a bomb after bomb after bomb. It was like, I just wanted to go back to Pachanga just to redeem myself. I was like, I'm a better comic than this. I need my redemption.
Yeah.
And then COVID was like, no, you don't. You should probably, we don't want you to bomb again, buddy.
I'm just trying to redeem my name here. So people in Temecula think slightly more.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so funny. You know, we talk about competitions, and I've never done it. I haven't done a ton of competitions, but you're going to know exactly what I'm saying right as I'm setting it up. But my favorite competition moment ever was the San Diego comedy competition that Zoltan won, that you were hosting, and he went on. And the way you win these competitions is to be in the room. And,
oh my God!
And he's the master of that. And he said something along the line, I might not get exactly right, but you introduced him, and he said, Dan Bublitz is the only person I have ever met who looks like their name.
Yep.
Like you look like a Bublitz.
It was so funny because then he like looked around the room too, and he goes, yeah, they say the first prize is a bunch of money. You know, whatever it was, I think it was $1,000 at the time or what. And he like looks around and is like, I don't know, I'm looking around and I don't think they have it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're good for it. It's so good. That's how you win those things. He told me.
Oh, absolutely.
He told me once that he learned in like a competition. I don't remember the competition or the comic's name, but he watched a guy. There were like 2 comics, and one guy went up and he did like 5 minutes on, you know, how like mimosas are like a foo-foo drink or something like that. Like it was like about mimosas, and it was like making fun of mimosas and da-da-da-da. Next comic goes up, is cranking away, he's doing really well. He's like crushing, he's doing really well. And then out of nowhere he goes, hey waitress, could I get a mimosa? Boom! Like they just set the room on fire. And like, just little things like that, like can just like in moments. I mean, in comedy in general, like just to put you in the room. I remember once doing that, following a comic who you may or may not guess is African American named P-Man, and P-Man, you remember P-Man did like did like 15 minutes on or 8 minutes on being black.
You're definitely the 2 opposite spectrums of comedy.
And I follow him. And yeah. And I just say something like it's really hard for me, you guys, because P-Man just did all my stuff. And just do a little thing like that and acknowledge that this crowd just went through freaking whiplash. and I don't know. That's like I think it's part of the reason that sometimes people like heckler responses, because they know they're getting a unique experience. They know we're not up there reading our script, you know, and the people like that. That's why they like improv, you know, like improv is spontaneous and often not that good, but people like it because it's spontaneous. So if people know that it's spontaneous, then the bar is lowered for how good it has to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you can even see that just at like regular shows, being in the moment, you know, and that can go both ways, where it can work, you know, being in the moment and being in the room and showing you're there goes really good and the crowd is there. And then, I mean, you can see how, like, when you're not, how it backfires, because you see this a lot where a comic will have an let's rewind that.
Hilarious.
An interaction with somebody in the front row, you know, and something will come up about what they do for work or something, and then a comic or two later comes in and has the exact same interaction because they weren't in the room and didn't hear any of it. You know, and it's like, and then the crowd is all awkward after that.
Like, we already covered this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually why I was thinking about how I'm going up this weekend and I'm closing, and well, theoretically I'm going up this weekend, and it's actually I feel like it's going to be a big disadvantage to go late, because you know, all this stuff's going to be talked about, and maybe that's an advantage in that I don't have to talk about it, you know.
I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, like this all got covered already.
So because you know that's gonna be what. Everybody's talking about.
Normally like keep an ear towards what's going on stage, you know, or if, especially if I don't know the comic, just so I hear like if they're burning premises and stuff. But like this one, I'm going to listen to every word, you know, of every before me, because you know I don't like. If they've heard before me 45 minutes of COVID jokes, I'm good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They'll be ready to tap out.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Where are you potentially going up? In San Diego or somewhere else?
Yeah, North County here. There's supposed to, I think it's going to happen. I don't know. It's all in the air.
All up. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just like my dates in Tacoma got rescheduled to late June, and then the Comedy Works got scheduled late June. It's like everything is just so like fingers crossed right now, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Now, I got some stuff I know this is the art of bombing. We haven't even talked about bombing. You did tell a story about bombing on somebody else's show, which was a crazy story.
Have you not heard that before?
I had not heard that before, but that was a pretty intense story. But like, so you got the opportunity to be on Heart of the City, and you've also had the opportunity, you were open for a fairly well-known clean comic, touring quite a bit and stuff. And that was kind of before the Heart of the City already. You were already doing that, right? Is that correct?
The stuff with John Chris, the timing there, I was touring with Nate a little bit before the Heart of the City thing, but that was like here and there. Like when the dates with Bergazzi are a little more sporadic. With John, I was on like his full tour, and I think I done some dates with John, like smaller things, and then the Heart of the City thing filmed, and then the first round of the tour, and then it aired, and then the next round of the tour. So it was all kind of like intermixed.
Okay. So it was all kind of the same time. Okay. Yeah. Because I was curious if what kind of led to what, but if it was all happening at the same time.
Yeah, they were kind of unrelated, different, different lanes.
What did lead to kind of getting you to that point where you got to, was it opening for Nate and then that kind of led to that, or?
Yeah,
or I'm talking more for touring with some of the bigger comics and stuff, because those are some pretty big tours.
Oh yeah. Those are like
theater and
with touring with John and with Tim Hawkins before that in the Christian kind of circuit. Those are massive shows, huge, like thousands. Like, I think the biggest one we did was in like Louisville, was like 9,000. insane.
Oh, buckets.
It's insane. Not, by the way, 9,000, not fun to do comedy for. Too many people.
That's right.
You know, and you know, I think that's like, you know, with Nate, it was, you know, it's both scenarios. You just kind of are out there, and sometimes you get lucky and the right people see you, and you, like I was on a show with Nate and we just kind of started hanging out and talking, and, you know, he had some shows, well, he had some club shows in, I think one of the first things I did with him is he had some club shows in Phoenix. And I was like, hey man, is there any chance I could just do spots? And then I was like, you know, no lodging, no pay, no anything. I would just love to come out and do spots. And so there's like little things like that where you just are like, hey man, I want to be associated with this in any way that I can. And so we just kind of stayed in touch through stuff like that. And then, he invited me to do some of like, I'll do some of like his California stuff and West Coast stuff. I'm not his primary guy though. Brian Bates, who you probably know too. Brian is the guy that tours with him the most. And same with John and Tim. You're just kind of in and around that scene a little bit, and your name gets thrown out and they see a clip, or you're on a show and you get a chance, you know, like you get both Tim and John. I had ones where it was like a one show, kind of like auditions essentially. And those led to maybe another offer and then another offer and so on and so forth. So those were definitely, you know, they're fun, you know, and the biggest thing that can come from those things, and in some ways I was good about this, and other ways it could have been better, was like, it's not just about your stage time. It's about those people watching you, and are you capitalizing on potentially gaining a fan, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Nate told me that one of my weekends with him, we were in Spokane, was like, you know, if you get fans, you win, you know, like the goal, of course the goal is to be funny. Your primary goal as a comedian is to be funny. Your secondary goal is to get fans. Like that's the next thing. And sometimes they go hand in hand, but a lot of time they don't. A lot of time they're totally irrelevant, because you and I both know some incredibly funny people with no fan base. And then some other people that were like really with a huge.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So, you know, there were some ways like, you know, promoting my pod, and then promoting, you know, some of my socials that I did well. There were other ways that I wish I would have had an email list, you know, active on my website during those huge tours, because, you know, I neglected how many people really like to actually use those. So there's definitely some pros and some cons, but yeah, like that was the ways that it helped me the most, was just like, you know, I mean, obviously financially, like if not for Tim Hawkins, I couldn't have been a full-time comic as early as I was. He offered me a lot of work, and I was able to quit my job for that. And then the real challenge after that became, okay, how can I keep some of these fans? You know?
Oh, absolutely. It's great. And with social media, you just don't ever know what'll work. You know, I sat around as an old person constantly. As soon as the pandemic started, I just was making fun of TikTok left and right. And I'm not bored enough for TikTok yet. And I'm not this and I'm not that. And then I had Dusty Slay on the podcast, and we were talking about TikTok, and he said how he was using it, and you know, like he blew up on it, and it's been really good. And I was like, I went on and just kind of watched some of his stuff, and I was like, I'll throw some stuff out there, and it's worked out really good. I have a video that's got almost 30,000 views, and I'm like, what the hell? Like I have no following, you know.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, I have more views on TikTok than every other social media combined.
Absolutely.
I've only been on it for like 2 months, and all I do is post stand-up clips. That's all that's on there.
Yep, same. You know?
So when somebody told me that, when I was like, no, you just go post your stand-up clips, and I was like, all right, that's fine. As long as it's stand-up, you know, me just be the elitist purist, you know.
Yeah, that was how I felt too. I was like, okay, maybe if just stand-up clips, okay, all right, I'll check it out. Well, and then I also went and just searched stand-up on there. Like I did some research on top of, looking at what Dusty Slay was doing and what he was kind of talking about on the podcast, I went and did research of other stand-up to see what was going on. And you've got like Comedy Central's got stuff on there.
Yeah.
And you've got like all these different platforms doing that already. Or different comedy related things.
Which is like through and you're like, okay, well, if you do it, then I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I went into it like, I'm probably not going to gain anything out of this, but anything's worth the shot. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm still not sure if I'm going to gain anything from it. Like,
I'm not either.
I'm not sure because it's a hard thing to like quantify. It's it's similar to like because you can't promote on it. You can't like if I can post a thing on Instagram or Facebook about upcoming shows, I can't do that anywhere on TikTok. It doesn't make sense. Nobody's going to see it. And so you're just like, I'm getting all these views. Will it equate to people coming to shows? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the trick, like trying to figure out how to take that, whether you get a good following or good views and trying to translate that into other social media type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like really like you said, to capitalize on it, cause you're right. Cause it doesn't matter. You can have 100,000 views on a stand-up clip or whatever. But if that doesn't mean they won't come to a show, like, that doesn't mean anything.
I've had maybe one comment be like, hey, are you ever coming to Portland or something like that? Like, and it's just not, I don't know that it's a ticket buying fan base, but well, hopefully.
Yeah. If anything, hopefully it helps get your name, get the name out there. That's one thing you can hope for.
And it's comparable to YouTube is like that too. And it's also, I've heard people talk about like their like Netflix specials type thing where like you don't know if it gives you a boost until you start touring again. Like, and is it going to be immediate? Is it because you don't know your numbers and you're just like, I hope people watched it. I don't know though. I didn't see like a big increase in followers. So it's like, you're just like, I mean, I won't really know until I start touring again. And if I hear people say, I saw you on TikTok, then okay, there you go.
That's true. That's very true. Cause it's same with with YouTube for me, like I have more views on TikTok than I've ever had on anything on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, and it's insane, and you put pretty much the same content on both, so it's like, it's like, I don't get it. I'm like, and the video that's doing really well started out okay, but it wasn't like, I honestly thought it topped out at like 500 views. I was like, all right, well, that's cool. That's a good start. And then all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, it just keeps going. Like, what is even happening?
Yeah. That TikTok algorithm is cruel and how it messes with us. Like, here's a little something. Now you're done. Here we go again. Now we're done. Here's a little more. And you're just like, well, I hope I made you happy, algorithm. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I don't know what and see, for me, I'm interested in this stuff because I'm going to school for marketing, or I went to school for marketing. So I'm like really interested in all this stuff and trying to figure out these algorithms, not just for my own purposes, but just because that's what I went to school for. Now I'm interested in this stuff. Yeah. And it's like so frustrating not being able to figure it out because it constantly changes. That's
the thing. If they're teaching it in a college, it's outdated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but we're like way into this. Let's do a quick, do a story about bombing quick. Oh no, this is great. This has been great conversation. This is awesome. But I want to get to a little bit of the bombing part.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to retell that college gig. If that's what you're hoping for.
Whatever you got. I mean, that was a good one, but you can share it.
It's an all-time bomb for me. It's one of those. It's so funny because I've told a lot of people. Sometimes you forget who you haven't told. Eventually, I'm like, this story. I hope I put it on stage, or like this is not happening, or anything like that. Because it's as far as bomb stories, it's a big one. So, okay. So context. I'm doing a college, and if your folks listen to this, they probably are comedy fans, and they know the college gigs are historically mediocre at best. Very rarely is there a good one. very often there's a bad one. You hope for an okay one. And I was doing this gig at Glenville State College in Glenville, West Virginia, like one stoplight town, tiny backwoods, out in the middle of nowhere. I remember I just kept driving. As I got closer, I kept being amazed at how many people had painted over their garages with the Confederate flag. Like their garage, they didn't have a Confederate flag. They're like, you know what, my garage is the Confederate flag. And I was like, okay, this is fine. You know, I was on day like 13 of like a 13-day run. I was like, it was my last gig. It was a Monday. I had just done a big weekend. I had just one last gig to do, and it was a Tuesday, and the Monday I had off, but I had off in the middle of nowhere, Ohio, like that was just kind of routing, and I got an infection. I had like an open cut, and it got infected, so I was sick. So I was sick, and I was on the road for like 13, and I was just like, I went into this gig, and I was like, I just have to get through this. I just have to. And I walk in, and there's nobody there. The show is supposed to start in like 15 minutes. There's one table of girls studying, and then there's two guys playing soccer in the back. It's like the cafeteria, but they're literally kicking the soccer ball back and forth. And the host is there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we have the comedy thing tonight." Like it's so nonchalant, and I'm just like, okay, well, whatever. I can go talk to these two people for an hour or whatever it may be. That's the thing. When you do a college gig, you have to do a full 60 minutes, not 45, not 50, 60 minutes. You are contractually obligated to do 60, which is such a long time of comedy. Like I can be watching my favorite comedian, and usually I'm good at about 45. I was like, I've heard enough, you know? And so they give me like the worst introduction ever. Hey, we've got the comedian. Welcome, Dustin. That was it. And there was no applause. There was nothing. And I go up, and it's just like I'm doing whatever I can at this point to try. Like I started doing some bits. I started doing some jokes about the college. I started talking to these girls in the front, because at this point they were like my only audience. And I remember they're like, "Do you have any jokes about animals?" They were like I was, they were just putting coins in me. And I tell one joke that I have about animals, which is kind of like not anti-animal, but it's not pro-animal. And they hate that, of course. And I was like, and I usually close with that. And I was like, dang, I just burned my closer. Barely. Now, I'm trying to do some more bits. They're hating it. They start talking to each other, and I start talking to them. And I remember they go like, "Why do you keep talking to us?" And I go, "Well, you know, I'm doing comedy right now. Like you're kind of interrupting me." And I'll never forget. They go, "We didn't ask for this."
Oh, Jesus.
And I remember in that moment thinking, they're right. What they're doing is what's supposed to happen in this room. They are studying, and why am I here? Why am I doing this? Now, more people have started to come in at this point, but they're not coming in and sitting down and watching the show. What happened was the show started at like 6, and the classes got out at 6. So people were coming into the cafeteria after their classes, and so it was this kind of like slow, 5 people here, 5 people here, and I'm on stage, and then there's the 2 people in front of me, and then way far behind me or in front of me is where they're ordering their food. And so it's very loud back there because people are coming in and ordering their food. And the loudest person in the room is not me. It's the sandwich lady who keeps calling out the orders. Every time the sandwich is done, she'll be like, "Dan, turkey on rye." Just so loud. And I'm like, and I kind of like start to sense, because I'm bombing, I'm sweating. I kind of start to feel the mob turning on me, like from a distance, because I'm starting to hear like little boos and like, "This guy sucks," like a little "you sucks," like stuff like that. Like I can feel you're talking about senses being up. I was like, okay, nobody is my ally right now. Like I have, and so I go like, well, maybe I have to do crowd work. I can't just stand up here and bomb, which is what I should have done. I should have sat down on my chair, read my act, and just left, you know? So I do a thing where I'm asking people their names, and I'm not getting anywhere to participate. And then one guy, I go, what's your name? And he goes, D. And I go, D. And he goes, D's nuts. And there was like a beat, like a pause, and then like an eruption from everybody, like, oh, like people are standing on chairs and tables and starting to like, and now it's a mix of like, ohs and boos and D's nuts and got him. Like people are jumping around, like they've lost their minds, like over this like burn. And I look down at my phone because I'm timing myself, and I'm at 18 minutes.
Oh, no.
I'm supposed to tell jokes for 42 minutes. And I put my mic in the stand, and I go, I don't need this. And I walked out. The only time in history I've not done my time, and I still have mixed feelings about it, but I just saw no other way out. And and you can't, like, I couldn't be mean to him. I couldn't cuss him out. I couldn't be aggressive. It's a college gig. I have every restriction in the world. I'm sick. I'm just like, I've got a red eye to catch. Like I had to fly out of Baltimore that night. I had a 3-hour drive to Baltimore, and I walk through, and I'm fast walking because I'm like, I have to get out of this room. And I just hear the boos like pushing me out of the room.
Oh, Jesus.
You suck. Like just awful. Like, and I immediately, like within like 5 minutes, I get a call from like my low end agent who's like, I can't believe you walked out. What are you talking about? He's not my agent anymore. And he's like, you got to perform even if there were 0 people. And I was like, I would have loved 0 people to be there. You know, that would have been easy. 0 people would have been a piece of cake. This wasn't.
That hour would have been a cakewalk.
Yeah, there were no humans there. There were animals there who wanted blood. That's what I was walking into. And they and then the dean calls me. The dean calls me, and it was like, I can't believe you would leave. You left. What are you talking? You're supposed to be a professional. And I remember he said, like, I hope that you have a lot of pillars under you because you just burnt this bridge. And I was like, the bridge to Glenville State College? And I was, I got a flurry of like, I remember I went and I like slept my way through a red eye flight, and I woke up to like 100 Facebook notifications all over my page. It just said, D's nuts, D's nuts, D's nuts. Got it. Got it. I was like, animals won't let me rest. And I got on stage the next night to like talk about redeem yourself, just to get it off. And our friend Taylor was there, and she hugged me, and she was like, welcome back. Cause I was like giving her all this in like real time. And I was like, I just had the worst set in the history of comedy. And it's so funny. Like people, like, I always put this like button on it, cause people talk a lot about like, you know, learning through failure and, you know, you're stronger because of it. And I was like, no, I wish this wouldn't have happened. This didn't make me better. Not in the least. Maybe if I would have gotten through it, I would have felt like I'd accomplished something. I was like, they won that night.
It was like nothing I could do. Well, that's
exactly. And even
sometimes
go ahead.
The best thing you can do is walk off. I've seen plenty of comics that are doing so horrible. I'm just like, man, I wish you would just stop. It would be, you know, because they try to keep going, and it just makes the show even worse, you know?
Yeah. So we all were having a bad time that night. And actually, I think they had a great time. I thought about that. Like, if I was a college kid and remembering that's the funniest thing in history.
Absolutely.
You've never heard of came in and just you booed him off stage. That's the funniest thing they've ever seen. You know?
Obviously, every time somebody yells out "D's nuts" at that college, they just all erupt because they all remember what happened.
They won't feel an ounce of remorse. That's my best story, and that's also their best story. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh man. Now the bumming of bombing, the dreadful feeling of bombing, and I like when I ask this question, I like getting a comparison of how it's changed over time. So, like when you first started out, how did bombing affect you versus how does it affect you now, or how long does it last for you? Like when you that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, when I bombed early, I would feel like really, really discouraged, like I'm no good at this. And it would be a lot of like, self-wallowing and, like, oh gosh, I'm terrible. I'm never going to be any, especially when people were having good sets around you and you just knew you were the problem, and I would definitely like use that as like positive energy. Like, how can I get better? How can I'm just got to keep working hard. And I have this like thing that I tell my wife, like when things go bad and comedy goes bad or a video is bad or I'm getting dumb comments or losing followers because I said that Black Lives Matter, whatever it may be, I always tell her is like, all I can do is my next set, right? Like that's the only thing I can do is just get back on stage. Like when it goes bad, and now I feel like when I bomb, I understand why I bomb more now, so it doesn't bother me as much. Like, I understand that I bomb because I did a bunch of new material. Or if you have, for example, if you have jokes that have worked 100 times and don't work once, that one is like, well, something was weird tonight, and it probably might have had something to do with me, but it probably didn't. It probably was an external thing, like where you were maybe at in a lineup, or it was a bad crowd, or who you followed, or something like that. Like there's external reasons, and you can be a little more objective about it. Like you can take it less personally. I don't take bombs that personally anymore. I feel like I know enough about, I don't want to say comedy, but enough about my experience as a comedian that when I bomb now, I know exactly why I bombed, And a lot of times it's just, it was a bad show, like, I mean, I remember doing a show at a bar. This was like probably less than a year ago. And, there was barely anybody there and I was doing okay. Same thing. I was doing a closing 30 and 30 in a bar show is like 2 hours. So why just do 15 for closing, And I remember there was a table that sang happy birthday to their table 3 times during my set. 3 times. The second time I thought it was a joke. And then the third time I looked down at my watch and I was at like 27. And then I joined the happy birthday singing. And I encouraged the rest of the crowd that was there. And I just like, that was one of those things that you're like, I got a drunk table of 12 way deep in the crowd that keeps singing happy birthday. This isn't on me.
Yeah, right. Can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So, they don't beat me up as much anymore, but I think it's just because I'm a little more analytical and I understand why they happen.
Yeah, which I think that's something you comics gain over time, because I'm the same way too. Like when I was, early on, it would bother me way more than it does now, because now, like, in different situations too, like affect me differently. If I bomb at an open mic, I don't care because I'm trying stuff out. If I bomb at a corporate gig, I'm like, it bothers me a little more just because I know I have to go ask for the money, and it's like a weird thing. But, but even then,
I mean, I run a weekly show that has mostly the same people there every week at Lestat's, and so I do okay at best usually, and I bomb a lot there. I usually am good for a bomb a week, and I know it's because it's a low energy show, and I'm first. And I'm giving them like 5 to 10 new minutes. And then the material that I am doing, they've heard before. So I know why it's happening. Still don't like it. Still don't enjoy it. But it's definitely kind of like just helped me, like, I don't know, like, no. I mean, it's helped me, like, the fear of bombing sometimes will lead to stop you from writing. And that's the scare. That's where the fear of bombing can really hurt you, is you only go jokes that are proven, and then you're just going to be plateauing. So,
absolutely, become kind of stale. Now, when you do like have bombs and stuff like that or bad shows, how do you try to analyze those sets, or do you even analyze them? And what do you try to do to analyze to see what happened to try to improve the next show?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a lot of time. I mean, when a joke's not working, I mean, like, so I write out a set list for every show, and then after it'll look just something like this, I'll have my bits on it. And afterwards I'll go like give like a little plus minus system, like on how they went, and little notes like, this was good, but it needed a tag, or this was good, but it needed a punchline, like strong premise, stuff like that. So I'm very analytical about the material itself. When the show itself just goes bad, usually we're all commiserating together, right? Like we all know it's because it was a bad crowd, or it was a low energy crowd, or, it was like, I don't know that I even spend much time analyzing it anymore. It's like usually I have like one or two sentences that I'll say to my wife when I went home, and she goes, how was it? How was it? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, 10 new people got barked in during my set, and I had the check drop. What do you want me to do? There's no way in this scenario.
No, and that's really tough, like that part of it where, you already got so much going on, even just like with the check drop, but then you have people coming in like during the last set. Yeah. It's like, why are you still barking at this point?
Right, exactly.
Like the show is almost over. Yeah. Like now all you're doing is making it worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to do some fun stuff. We talk about all the dark stuff, and we got to get into some fun stuff. I like to switch it up towards the end. So do you have any pre-show rituals or traditions that you do before a show?
Not really. No, I mean, I write out my set list, and then I kind of just try and, I try and get in a good headspace before I go up of, remembering the material. And then I just kind of have like, I'll usually do like some just like little jumps, just kind of get my energy up a little bit. And the kind of, I'm always telling myself, like when I go up, I want to be like positive, and I want to be generous. Like I want my demeanor to come across as positive, not necessarily because even some of my act is, kind of mean and has some bite to it, but like I want to, and that just comes from, I think positivity, like coming across like in very grateful, because I am grateful that a crowd's there. I'm trying to come across very grateful, because in some ways it makes you a little more heckle proof. Like people are like, hey, I like this guy, like you're a little more likable, positive, and grateful and thankful up there. Like, and then also like generous. Then that comes from the Seinfeld thing where he's talking about like, what we do is generous to like we're one of these jobs that like what we give, ideally what we do is if we're doing a good job, we provide to these people joy. This is a very generous thing to do. And so I just kind of have that mindset when I'm going on of just like, no, it's not really just about me. It's about, what I'm giving to them, hopefully. And it puts me in like a little better headspace where sometimes you're just like, yo, these are my enemies.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, it's more mental than anything.
Yeah, that's good. And what, do you have a favorite or a best gig? What's one of your favorite gigs? I mean, you have a lot of stuff now, so
yeah.
I mean, it's always a tough one to pick.
It is, yeah. I mean, it was a TV taping, but that Heart of the City thing was a gig. And that's probably my favorite night of comedy that I can remember. Because it was at the Comedy Palace, which is hilarious because I've done so many bad gigs there. So many random gigs there too. They're like, hey, we've got a beauty pageant for second graders. Can you come in and do 30? The most random stuff happens at the Comedy Palace. And
I know.
It's going to be at noon. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be noon on Wednesday. But
yep.
And it was so funny. It was so great. I mean, the owners were like still charging the comics for drinks, which was hilarious. I was like, bro, we're here for a TV taping. I listened to one of the owners argue with the Comedy Central people that all the lights that they installed had to stay. It was so funny. It was like one of the funniest.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And then, I had a good set, and it was fun, and it was with, there were a lot of comics that were there, and friends and family, and they'd come out. I got a small little invite list, and so, it was great to invite, a lot of the people that are closest to me. And there's, what it is when you're so nervous, and then it goes well, it's such a good feeling,
Oh, absolutely.
So it's probably an easy pick. I mean, but yeah, that's probably it, or it's certainly the first one that jumps to mind.
Mm-hmm. When you got that, did you already have representation, or did that lead to representation? Or
I was not represented at the time, and it did not. I was kind of like being courted a little bit, but I hadn't officially signed with anyone, and so it wasn't really like a cause and effect. They were just kind of both happening around the same time. And the reps came from some shows that I did with Nate, or just some eyes on being there. So yeah, it was, I did not have representation at the time. I had just done a gig for a teachers union in Little Rock, and it was a nooner, and it went okay. It was a nice corporate gig check, and that was nice. But I was pretty beat down. Another one of those 6-7 dayers, and this was my last flight home, and there's no easy way to get home from Little Rock to San Diego, and it was an hour before I got on the plane, and I got the call from the producer, that you got it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was such a relief. And he's like, no, man, you were our easiest one to pick. And I was like, I wish you would have texted me that the day after.
Right?
Yeah. Because, there's that waiting time where you really have to go. Because I didn't feel like my audition went that well. I thought it went okay. But you just understanding in these things, it's about casting sometimes. And
oh, absolutely. It's all interesting how all that works. I mean, even before that, you and I got to do a show together that was for a Comedy Central contest.
Yeah.
We did that Up Next contest up in Ontario.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember feeling like I did better at that than I did my audition for Heart of the City. And nothing.
Oh, wow.
Not the Heart of the City thing went bad, but it was what it was, but at the end of the day, it's a mostly black show, and they had a white guy who was already clean and had a bunch of jokes about race, and they're like, yeah, that's our guy. That's helpful for what we're looking for,
Yeah. Because sometimes
that's me projecting. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, you don't know. Casting, when it comes to casting stuff like that, there's a lot more to it and anybody that's been in comedy long enough and has auditioned for things, you start to learn that, you know, even reality shows even the contests like America's Got Talent and things like that. It isn't about being funny, and it isn't always about being funny. It isn't always about your material. It's not variable.
Just about being funny. It is about being funny, but it's not just about being funny. And I think that's true even late night sets and stuff. There's a lot of us that could do clean 5 minutes, but are you what they're looking for? Your material, your look, your everything, all of it. Are you what they're looking for? So, not that any of this exists anymore, but.
Yeah, right. Who knows what's going to happen now?
Exactly.
All right. So the last thing I like to do, I like to play a little fun game called Pick a Number. You're going to pick a number between 1 and 20, and then I'm going to ask you a fun corresponding question to that number.
Okay. 13.
13. Lucky number 13. How many friendships have you ruined because you refused to play a game of Monopoly mercifully?
I can think of a couple family members that we don't talk to anymore. That's for sure. Yeah. It's less than 13, but it's not that far from 13. Yeah. Monopoly is just such a, I wanted to write a bit about that. Monopoly is a game that takes, it's the premise of the game is slowly over time, you give your money to richer people and pay taxes and avoid petty jail time. Just live your life at that point. Just you don't need to pay for this. There's no, and then every once in a while the government just throws you a little extra for, it's it really, Monopoly is the actual game of life. You know,
yeah, it's too real. That's for sure.
Too real. I don't. End of the game, give all your money to taxes and the rich. You're like, no, I don't. Now I got to be done playing the game and go do that in real life. I'm good.
Yeah, right. I actually just bought a version of Monopoly for my fiance, but it was a Garbage Pail Kids version of Monopoly.
It's funny. We have the one we have in our house is a Sonic the Hedgehog version, and it's way better. It's so much better. Yeah, it's like because it's something other. I mean, the characters are different, but it's just. When I first read the rules, and I was like, "Is this just going to be normal Monopoly, but instead of a shoe, I'm Tails?" You know, it's better, and it ends in like 30 minutes. No board game needs to be longer than 30 minutes.
Yes, that's true. Unless it's Risk or something very strategic.
Exactly.
You know. All right. Well, we'll finish up with where can people find you? Go ahead and plug your socials.
At Dustin Nickerson is DustinNickerson. That's all my social media handles, though it's Dustin Nickerson Comedy on TikTok and DustinNickerson.com for, shows and mailing lists and all that kind of stuff. You Google me, you'll find me. I think I'm currently the most popular Dustin Nickerson.
Well, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Dustin.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitzed Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week, and remember, stay safe so you can live to love.